Howdy folks, Midgardian Workshop here. Today I'm going to just show you a little bit about my forge that I built. Now I just took some pieces that I happen to have, but you could do the same thing by, scavenging your salvage yard, etc. And come up with some pieces. I happen to have this barrel. We used to run the horses around them and stuff like that, and so it was sitting there doing nothing, one of the extras, and so I decided, you know what, I wonder if I can make a forge out of that. Now, you can, if you can start a fire and put some rocks around it right on the ground, you can heat metal, to beat on, and to shape. You don't have to have something even, I don't want to say as elaborate as what I've got, and I have welded on it. You could, with a lot of time and patience, you could bolt this thing together, or something similar to it. It's something that, I'd been working on to help control the heat. That's the biggest reason I built it. Like I said, you can do it, just on the ground and build a campfire and throw some metal in it, and eventually you'll get it hot and you can work it. Having these things just help you, kind of regulate things a little better than just that. But can you do it that way? Absolutely. So mostly this is just kind of going to be a quick how I built it. It's already built, so all the parts and pieces, I'm just going to kind of show you some of them, and why I built it the way I did. Now, safety. I was pushing this or dragging it in and out of the shop and doing it outside when I'd fire it up to do some work, but especially during the wintertime, that makes it a little tough. So I wanted to bring it inside, and I've been wanting to do that for a while, and thanks to my brother, he provided me with the pipe, and so I got it inside now, which gets you out of the sun during the summertime, and actually provides a little more heat in the shop here during winter, but a little more private and not out in the open, and worrying about the wind blowing things around, and as I said, I run mine off of hardwood lump coal. Anthracite is what I'd like to be using once I can find it here locally or have it trucked in or something. It's not terribly expensive, it's just where we are, it's not the easiest thing to get a hold of. At some point we'll be going to it. Mostly because anthracite, you have to be putting air to it to get it to make it hot, and it doesn't burn away as fast as coal does, or even wood. Now, I could just throw some pieces of wood in here and actually get it to work. It's just, you just got to constantly be feeding it. This hardwood lump coal that I use, I mean, it still burns away, but it seems to last a while, and use what you can use when you can use it. I'm kind of real big for that anyway, but this works for me, and I'll try and get repositioned here a little bit. In fact, I think I'll just bring you with me, and we'll just get after it and kind of show you the forge here. Now, I'm going to spin you around and try and so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so obviously we have a pipe coming out. Now, this started out as a 55-gallon drum, and I cut this distance, if you're making one, is just up to you. For the size of the legs that I had here, this measurement turned out to be where I wanted to be as I'm working on it here. So if you're making one, whatever you decide to do with you know, this distance, there's no specific thing going on there. Now, I'm going to try and do this so we can get closer. And then, of course, this top piece up here is what I cut out for a hood that was left over from the bottom half. Okay, so it seems to be working pretty good for me. Now, you know, some guys might say it's too, whoops, let's get this back a little bit so we can see it. You know, too short, too narrow, whatever. This works for me. Maybe it should be lower down here to catch more of it, you know, but I didn't want to be bent over, humped in there trying to see it as well. So see what's going on in the fire pot. So, you know, find a distance that works for you, for your height, for your stature, you know, etc. So that's just how I ended up doing this one. Is okay. As we come in here a little bit, as I made my cutbacks out of it here and here, I did that so that if I had something long, let's just grab anything here. Ah, shoot. Like this piece of pipe, let's say, or a long piece of metal. See, I can still get this in the fire that entire length, wherever I might need to bend it. Now, I'm not saying this is the next feast or whatever, but you get the idea. I can still get over it and do what I need to do when it's fired up, you know, whether it be round or flat stock or what have you. It just, that was my thinking behind how I made this cutback, you know, so I can still get over top of it. Now, I'm going to try and focus in here, and I'll show you these pieces because I just happen to have one extra. But, come on, no, camera focus, be nice to me. So inside this portion is a disc brake hub. You know, I've got one here and I'll show it to you here in a second. And what I did is once I got my hole cut as to how deep in I wanted to be. Now, as you can see, it's not center, and I did that on purpose so that I could stack up my coal on the back side and eventually the anthracite and drag into it. So I have a little bit of storage here to be able to keep feeding my fire, you know. And with this drum being upside down with this little ridge, that, you know, was just kind of an automatic thing that worked out there. So I ground out some slots all the way around it, and then took the disc brake hub, which is one of these, and we'll back up here. Whoops, wrong back up. And I put this up under there after. Now I've got a welder. I realize you may not, but you could reuse the lug nut studs back in there and put bolts on them to plug them holes around there. But I just welded them up. So now, welding on this kind of metal, some of you guys that actually know something, you know, may agree or may not agree, but I preheated it and got it warm before I welded the holes up. It just helps with this kind of metal, and of course, you know, where it comes from and, you know, how many Chinese washers are pressed into it will make a difference, but that's besides the point. Basically, you just get those shut up, you know, get them closed. But that is what is under there. And then with the slots here, I pressed this up under there and then welded into the disc. So that got me the start of my pot here, as you can see. And that was sort of the beginning pieces. Then what I did is once I got it up here good and had it welded in, then I just took a hammer and rounded that edge off, because I cut it just a little bit small on purpose. I didn't want that right up against that edge. Once, because of the heat and stuff, I didn't want it to create issues in there, and I just hammered it down in that ring that was already in the other piece. And you know, that's how we ended up this far. Then I got some of this expanded metal from the hardware store. You know, it's inexpensive, and I made 2 pieces of it. One to go in like that. Actually, let's flip that over. This one, you know, you put one in there, and then I crisscross it like so to help keep my material from falling in and just plugging up, etc. So that was the start, other than the piece of downpipe, and I got that from just from the scrapyard, and found some pieces somebody else was throwing away, and I'll show you the bottom end of it. But first, maybe to give you a little better idea here, here's that same disc. I found a piece of pipe, you know, that fit that hole pretty good, and basically that's how you get your start. See? Now, I also welded that in, but first I took and made some little cuts in it all the way around and bended it over and hammered it to make a flange so that it would fit into that flange pretty good, and then just put a little bit of weld on it to hold it in case I ever had to take it apart. But you wouldn't have to weld this in. Once you got it bent and flanged out all the way around there, it'll slip and drop right in there just like butter. So those are the bigger pieces of that. Now, because this tripod is so wonderful a thing, I'm going to pause so that I can kind of show you. Well, I guess we can, before we get to that final piece, we can go like this. So as I've got some legs and some crossbars going across to hold it all up, and then 3 legs. One, the biggest reason I did that is so that when I'm standing there, you know, I don't have legs all the way around, and I just chose the 3, so I have one here that I can stand the other side of if I need to get in here pretty tight. I can get up there as close as I need to see what's going on. And so that's why I put one leg here and the other 2 further back. So I did 3 legs. You could do whatever you want to get it to stand up. Okay, now I'm going to try and focus in on this. So the wife had a vacuum cleaner that just wasn't sucking good anymore, and you know, the beater bar was all wiped out on it. Well, the motor still worked. So what I did was took it apart, and that, my blower end there's my blower motor. That's the motor out of the vacuum cleaner. Now that, obviously I need to hold it somehow, and you know, the air comes in here and it blows it out the other end. So I needed to have some way to hold it and control that airflow because of the way that these vacuum cleaner motors are made. So this is just one of those chrome hub closers, hub cap for a set of custom wheels. This one happens to be steel. You know, you can still find them, you know, every once in a while. It's getting harder to find them because they're making them out of plastic, and so whatever you would need to use to do this. Now, as you see, it was too big to fit. So I just made some slits all the way around it, and then hammered them down until I got pretty close to this right here, to that diameter, and then just tacked it in. Now, if you don't have a welder, you could make these longer, hammer them down, and put a big radiator clamp around that, and probably get the same job done. Okay, so, and because it was already there, and let me see if it's in the shot. I'll back up here just a little bit. This little thing right here is the automatic puller for the cord to make this run. So I reused it since it was already here, and the right size wire, etc., to run the motor. And then I can pull it out or rein it back in. Right now I've got it, you know, going over there to the plug. But it made it real handy when I was going in and out of the shop, so I could just pull it out and plug it in, and, you know, push a little button here, and, you know, it sucked the cord back in. But that's what this is. I just reused it since it happened to be here, and I made a couple of brackets. And this is going to be the neat trick, because getting this tripod to go low is not as easy a game. So I'm going to pause and reposition. Okay, now, so I'd ran out of gas, so I had to use just flux core wire. So, and really for this sort of thing, I'm not making a watch. But as you can see there, I hope, I just drilled a hole in the end of that cap, and then made a T-pipe here, and that goes all the way up under there to the other piece. Now, as you come down here a bit, and I'm using my flashlight because it's a little bit dark, and I didn't want to take it all apart and flop it upside down. So as that comes down, what I did down here was I made just a little flap. One, this lets the ash and stuff out when you're cleaning it out into this stainless bucket under it. But the biggest reason I did this, because I played with these before, is I can also control my airflow. If I'm in between, depending on my fire, etc., I can open, I can open or close this a little bit to help let airflow out of when the motor's running. So I can really fine tune what air is going up into the hot pot. And I can clean it as I go. Now, what I'm going to do here, let's see. Well, since I'm kind of already here, I guess this is a good time. So this switch, so the power comes in over here, okay, into there, comes out of there. There's one of the brackets that I put in there to hold the motor, and the power comes into this piece, and this is the piece that I was talking about in an earlier video. This varies the voltage coming in, which in turn I can control how fast the motor's spinning. And it's just the two wires in, there's no ground on it in this system, and two wires in, two wires out. Easy breezy. You can't really mess it up. And that gives me even a, you know, a little better way to fine tune where the motor's spinning. Now, because it's a vacuum cleaner motor, the downside too is it really doesn't want to spin slow. It wasn't designed for that. It was designed to, you know, turn it on and it goes full bore until you shut it off. But as you've seen in the other videos, it is working. Now, if you've got little gaps like this one does, where I didn't weld it up, and yeah, I could put tape around it, but it doesn't matter. You know, as long as you've got, you could probably use a hair dryer, you know, come off your tee And instead of having all this, use a hair dryer. Will that last forever? Probably not, because they're kind of the same way. You turn them on, you do your hair, and that's about it. But this is the biggest pieces of, kind of how I did it. And that's that crossbar going across for that to sit on. As you can see, and tie them legs together and make them strong. Let's see if I can get up in there. And really, that is the big end of all of it. And, whoops. Then, of course, you need your pipe. It's going up in there. Oh, that's nice. To get your exhaust out. And that's just all measuring, and sometimes you can get it perfect and sometimes you got to trim it. This main piece right here, I had to trim once I got my sizes. I already had that hole in the shop because the stove, whoops, used to be there. And I've moved the stove. I'm doing some shop reorganizing, and it just seemed smarter to put it there. Now, that's my wood stove over there making some heat for the shop. And then up top, I've got a fan, an old box fan I got at one of them secondhand stores. And I really haven't been showing a lot of the shop because I am reorganizing. And you're not going to be able to see that very good. Dang it. I put that piece right in front of it. But let's see if I can get close enough. Right there is a variable switch for like a ceiling fan or a kitchen light where you can turn it. And I just wired it in to the cord. And then of course it plugs in, and I can vary the speed of my fan that's sitting right over top of my wood stove. So that is pushing all maximum heat that stove can make and filling up the rest of the shop. Now I share my shop with the horses and the barn, and we did that because obviously, that was just the easiest way. And so things aren't quite finished, but it's all right. Yeah, they never seem to be. So that's the big end of the stove. Now, at some point I'll get it, painted up with some nice stove black, and it'll look a little better, but I'm kind of in the idea for most things. Let's see if I can do this. I've learned a long time ago, at least for me, when I'm inventing, if you make a watch and it doesn't work, it was an expensive watch to throw away. So I found if I spend the time that I've got making sure it works first, I can make it pretty later. And if I've got time, I can make it pretty later. Putting paint on that is not going to change its performance one bit. Now, people come over and they see it, or now it's all over the YouTube. I should have took the time and went ahead and done it, but until I made sure that it was going to work inside the shop, I just didn't want to go that route in case I had to throw it away. Now, as far as safety goes, the biggest reason I want to go to anthracite, and I don't know why I have trouble with that word, but I do. I've got to do a little more studying on it. With the coal, I definitely have to keep a door open. Just for the simple fact that you don't want to make yourself sick. Coal puts off a lot of CO2, so you really want to pay attention to have a door open if you're going to run one inside. I'm hoping that the anthracite doesn't emit the CO2 that coal does. I know it's still a coal, but I'm not sure what those levels come out, and I'm having some issues trying to find out what those percentages are, as to whether that would be my optimum thing. Is if I've got a fire going in the stove, it's like I came out here, it's 26 degrees in the shop, so I put a little fire together. Well, for me, even though I have trees on the property, the wife doesn't want them cut, and so we have to get wood. Well, for me, house wood, burning that expense in the house is completely different than me burning it out here in the shop, because then that's a luxury, so I don't do it as often. I've had some issues where I couldn't go to the woods as much and go get the wood, etc., and I've had to buy it and have it brought in. So there's lots of other pieces that go with those things. Hopefully this year I can stay healthy enough to where I can harvest my own wood and have a nice little stockpile that I'm not worried about whether I'm burning it in the shop or not. We'll see. It might be a better year. But the CO2 levels, you know, that's something you have to pay attention to. And I have one. It's over there. Just a little simple plug-in CO2. You know, if you're having trouble finding one, usually an RV shop have them, you know, because they want them inside the RVs too, to let you know whether you're going to get sick or whether the oxygen levels are too low, or, you know, that sort of thing. So that's kind of an important piece if you're going to do this inside, I think. So far, if I leave the door open a little bit, fire it up, it doesn't seem to be affecting me. It doesn't set off the machine. So I'm hoping that because I am in a barn, I'm not in a house, and it's not insulated, and there's definitely some leaks and cracks here and there, that it'll work. We'll keep you posted whether that comes to fruition or not. However, back to the main topic here. That's my stove. Now, as you know, rules and regulations, and everybody wants their parts and pieces and puts their hand in your pocket. I've ran the pipe up here in Oregon. It's like 4 feet above the crust. Well, awesome. Neither of mine do. I haven't set fire to the world, and I haven't set fire to the shop. This is a metal building, so I know that helps. As you're putting your pipe in, and if you're in a metal or wood building, you know, look up some real rules there, and it'll help you from setting your place on fire. Excuse me. Now, am I saying what I've done is not going to be an issue at some point? It may be. I've been running both these things for quite some time now, and they're working out. Now, if I ever sell this place and I got to rework it, then that's something else entirely, and I'll deal with that when that time comes. So, I appreciate you coming, staying with me as we look at the home-built forge I made. Mostly I just want to show you that you can take almost nothing and make something work most of the time if you stick to it a little bit. And at that, we'll see another project with it made at some point, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thanks for staying with me. Okay, so while I have you here, there's something I wanted to tag on to this, and I kind of forgot as I was going on about the forge there. Formal apologies for the walking stick video. The microphone on this camera is a lot more sensitive than I thought. So with the radio going, I didn't realize that, one, it was picking it up that good, and I couldn't figure out how to thin it down as I was loading up the video to send it out. Tried, but it didn't work out for me. But just as a little thing to somebody else, if you're watching this and you get started doing this thing, first part of that video has a Journey song playing on the radio. Just happened to be that that's what was on the radio. I didn't plug that in as part of my video. The only music I put on is the music you see in the beginning of my videos, and that's it. But they flagged me for copyright infringement on that song playing. Now, as I've said before, I've tried real hard to look up the rules and things like that, and these magic things that just get popped onto you, you know, when you're not the creator of YouTube, all their rules that just tend to fly out of the closet every once in a while. So exactly where that's going to go and stuff, I'm going to kind of try and contact them and see if I can get that off of there. I even said in the video, I realized I got the radio going, and if I was a smart feller, I would have turned it all the way off, not knowing. But sometimes it's cold in the shop, and it helps me kind of keep working, listening to the radio a bit. Obviously, I can't do that anymore. But I do think it's kind of dirty pool and horse shit that if there was any kind of a copyright infringement, should have been my radio company. But I got hit for it. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff going on right now that there's some copyright terribleness happening. Jukin, something like that. They're causing a lot of havoc. You got all these snakes and carrion trying to steal from people for their ignorance. And I don't mean that they're stupid, but from not knowing what that rule may be, because they're making up the friggin' rules. I guess this is more kind of a little bit of a rant, and I'm going to try not to do that very often. But just kind of funny that, you know, it wasn't even the whole song that was playing on that in the background on the radio. What few videos I've done, I don't play that, you know. So anyway, like I said, so from now on, no radio, no music. Not that that was a big premise to what I do anyway, but it just, like I said, it's just kind of silliness in the part of these hoops and things that you got to jump through to protect yourself. I thought I was doing a pretty good job of trying to stay within the rules. I'm like that anyway. I'm not really a gray person. I'm black, white. Gray, to me, is the worst place to live, because then in that gray area is where the made up stuff comes from. There's rules, there's not rules for this. If you understand where I'm getting at here, whenever you play in that gray area is where the lawyers play, because you can make up anything you want to an extent and then try to plug it to the black or white. And to me, I've never been much of a gray person. I've always tried to stay within black or white, right or wrong. Gray is what screwed up this world. So, end of my rant. I'll just try to do better. Thanks.